This weekend is the World Deadlift Championships taking place in Cardiff. We have some incredible athletes coming from all over the world to try and pull 505 kilos. But so far, only two strongmen have ever pulled 500 plus. Eddie Hall and Thor Bjornsson, two of the greatest strength athletes we've seen, lifted some incredible numbers, performed in deadlifts time and time again. I thought it would be fun to look back at what these guys put themselves through to pull these monumentous numbers and see if we realistically think anyone this year has a chance at 505. So let's look at the training. Firstly with Eddie Hall. Eddie actually never went over 450 kilos in his training leading up to his 500 kilo attempt. He didn't want his central nervous system to be totally fried before attempting the big weight. He also spoke about the mental side of preparation. He had visualization sessions. He worked with a therapist to try and get his head in a zone where he could recreate that fight or flight sensation as if a child was in trouble under a crushed car, that a parent would be able to lift that car. He was recreating that type of mentality. But training wise, he went up to 450 kilos. That was the biggest weight he pulled. He says he pulled it like a speed rep. Now, if we look at Thor Bjornsson's training, we've got videos of him pulling 440 kilos for a triple. He's pulling 470 kilos as his last heavy session before his 501 attempt. Now, one thing that's clear with both of these guys, they didn't struggle to lift these weights. They pulled them very efficiently and effectively. And that's a big factor when it comes to then being able to recover and pull another even bigger weight when it comes to competition. A lot of the guys we see training for this competition this weekend, some of their training videos have looked hard. So sometimes you can be pushing yourself a little bit too hard in training. When we look at that 470 from Thor, when we listen to what Eddie said about his 450, they were fast, effective, smooth pulls. So when Eddie pulled 500 kilos, it was in July of 2016. His only competitions that he did leading up to that show, he did Britain's Strongest Man in the January, and then in the March, he went to the Arnold Classic, but he only did the deadlift. So he wasn't cramming lots of competitions into this period of time. His sole focus was on this big deadlift, max lift. It's all he was thinking about at the time. He wasn't allowing himself to be distracted by other competitions. His whole prep was solely focused on one lift. So Thor has a similar story in terms of prep towards his 501 attempt. He did compete in the Arnold's Classic, which was in March, and it was 8 weeks after that he focused on the deadlift. Now, he was focusing on doing this deadlift in a competition. Unfortunately, COVID hit and everything closed down. So the opportunity for him to do this gym as part of the World Ultimate Strongman Feats of Strength series came up, and he took it, knowing that he really wanted to get out of heavy lifting. He wasn't focused on trying to keep doing these competitions, keep lifting these crazy weights. He set himself a goal and he went and focused solely, as Eddie did, on pulling 501. So let's talk about food. Both of these guys came in huge for these attempts. Eddie was up at between 185 and 190 kilos. Thor, I believe, topped the scales at about 205 kilos. Absolutely huge men, both risking health and fitness to pull these crazy weights. They weren't worrying about being good all-round athletes. Every bit of their training, in terms of training, their nutrition, their supplementation, everything they were doing was to try and come in as big and as strong as possible to pull these monstrous weights. So obviously, since the Deadlift World Championships started back in 2014, it's given the deadlift a much bigger limelight than, say, the competitions previous to that, where there was just a max deadlift as part of a competition. Now the max deadlift has become a huge thing. So let's quickly take a look at previous max deadlift winners in competitions and see how it affected their overall performance. So let's start the first Deadlift World Championships. 2014, the winner was Benedict Magnusson. He pulled 461 kilos, which was a new world record at the time, but he only focused on the deadlift. He did not compete in the whole competition. So the next big deadlift competition was the Arnold's Australia, and Eddie Hall pulled 462 kilos for a new world record, but came fourth overall in the show. So back at Europe's Strongest Man, where they had the Deadlift World Championships once again, this time Eddie Hall winning again, pulling 463 kilos, breaking his world record by 1 kilo. but had to pull out of the competition after the second event because he was so exhausted from the max effort he'd already put in. So then we moved on to the 2016 Arnold Strongman Classic, where Eddie Hall won the elephant bar deadlift with an amazing 465 kilos. This lift is done raw with no suit, incredible lift, but again, Eddie had to pull out from the whole competition. So Europe's Strongest Man 2016, we have the Deadlift World Championships again. This time Eddie was only focused on the deadlift. He wasn't competing in the whole competition. He comes in and does the incredible. Pulls 500 kilos. Even now, I still remember being in that arena watching this lift go up. It was an unbelievable feat of strength, something that will stay with everyone that was in that building for many, many years to come. Amazing lift. But we all saw how much it took out of him. Collapsing on the floor afterwards. Backstage, he was struggling. He needed medical attention. He put so much of his life into that lift for that one moment. I still haven't seen anyone go to the lengths to do what that man did. So 2017 Arnold Classic, we're back on the elephant bar, and Brian Shaw winning the deadlift with 449 kilos. A little bit of a step back from what Eddie was doing the previous year, but he still went on to win the overall show as well. So one of the most impressive deadlifts I've ever been able to witness and be a part of the same competition was the World's Strongest Man 2017. Eddie Hall wins the deadlift with 472.5 kilos, up against some of the greatest strongmen of the time. Hafthor Bjornsson, Brian Shaw, Martins Lissis, JF Caron, all incredible deadlifters. Eddie beats them all, and he went on to win the whole show. So 2018 Arnold's, we have Thor Bjornsson starting to show that he has interest in breaking a deadlift world record. He comes to the Arnold's and pulls an incredible 472 kilos on the elephant bar, which was a world record on that bar at the time. And he went on to win the whole show, taking his first Arnold Classic. So then we move on to the 2019 Arnold Strongman Classic, where we have Hafthor Bjornsson breaking and still setting the existing world record on the elephant bar at 474 kilos. This truly is an incredible lift because no suits are allowed at the Arnold Classic. 474 kilos on the elephant bar, showing that he's getting even closer towards that 500 kilo mark. And he once again won the overall competition. So 2019, we have the World Deadlift Championships once again for a max weight, and Jerry Pritchett from America and Rauno Heinla from Estonia both pulling 455 kilos, just over 1,000 pounds, to go joint first in this event. Now Rauno actually tore his hamstring during this lift, unfortunately affecting him for the whole competition. He ended up coming, I think he was last or second from last, but he did finish the competition with his torn hamstring. Jerry Pritchett, however, really strong performance, went on to come second overall. 2020 Arnold Strongman Classic, Hafthor once again wins the deadlift, this time only pulling 465 kilos, but still enough to take the win, and he went on to win the overall competition. Then his sole focus was on the 501 kilo standard deadlift, which he did on May the 2nd. 501 kilos, pulled in lockdown, in his own gym, on his own bar. No disrespect to Thor there at all. I commentated on this lift. It was an incredible lift. When you watch it, superbly pulled. It's a shame it wasn't done in competition, and I think most people would agree with that. We were in a very, very strange time. The weights were all weighed and shown on camera. It was refereed by Magnus Ver Magnusson. A lot of people think that Magnus is Thor's best friend. That is so far from the truth. But unfortunately, wasn't done in competition, but still 501 kilos. And what was impressive about this lift is how well he pulled it. He really did look like he had another 5, 10, 15 kilos in the tank. And when we spoke about the build up to this, he pulled 440 kilos for 3. He pulled 470 for one of the most beautiful smooth reps I've ever seen with that kind of crazy weight. Truly, truly incredible lifting. Finally, we have the 2021 World Deadlift Championships. This was part of the World Strongman Open, took place in Manchester. Even Makarov was the overall winner, pulling 475 kilos. He gave 505 kilos a good go, got the weight off the floor up to his knees, but could not finish the lift. Even went on to come last in the overall show. He has probably shown that he is the closest athlete to lifting 505 currently out of the active lifters. He's pulled 490 kilos in the gym, 475 kilos in competition. Is he the man that could pull 505? We have seen some incredible lifts leading up to this year's World Deadlift Championships. We've seen Rauno Heinla pull 460 kilos. We saw Graham Hicks pull 440 for 2. We've seen 440 plus lifts by a number of lifters, even Makarov looking incredible. But I still haven't been convinced as I was by Eddie and Thor with their training leading up to this show, with their determination, with their genetics, with their confidence. No one else has quite looked as impressive as those two. I personally don't think 505 is ready. I've said in another video I'd like to see some different types of jumps and give athletes the chance to just focus on winning another Deadlift World Championships. But 505 is a number. We've had 3 or 4 athletes say that 505 is their goal. You need to believe it before you achieve it. Cheesy line to go off, but I would be so happy to see this record go. We could well see the most 1,000-pound lifts. We've seen injuries leading up to this competition, athletes having to pull out. We may well see injuries on the day. Pulling these numbers is just mind-boggling. I'm an athlete or a former athlete that pulled some big numbers. I know what it does to your body. Tears muscles, taxes the central nervous system, destroys you mentally. Can we see that 505 go? Let us know in the comments below. Do not forget to tune in on Saturday the 6th. It's going to be epic.